What's up guys, it's me, Roku, back with some more League of Legends videos. This time I'm going to go through a tier list of the most powerful champions in the top lane according to their strength in solo queue for the early Season 12. The new season is just around the corner and I had to make this and get it out so that you guys know how powerful each champion is and what their role is in the meta so that you can, know whether to main them or not, because what I'm going to do is go through like the position, the strengths, and the weaknesses of every single champion as I bring them up. In addition to just listing them, I've also added a border around every single champion's portrait to indicate difficulty of play. Red is very difficult, orange is, kind of difficult, but not as difficult as red, then yellow, then green for the easiest difficulty. So I added that too to, give this tier list a bit more depth. I'm going to go from tier to tier up to down, and within each tier, I'm going to go from left to right. The champions are organized in an alphabetical way, by the way. There's not really, it's kind of difficult to, scale champions according to power, like when they're next to each other, because champions do very different things, right? So I decided to just list them alphabetically, but there is a big power gap between the tiers. You can be sure of that. Now, I'm going to go through and explain some of the context behind this tier list so that you can get a better understanding of the game and how the meta is right now. But if you, don't care about that and just want to know the information about your champion, then just scrub along. Every time I talk about a champion, I'll just lift them up like this, shake them around so that it's, easier to see in the little preview thing as you scrub along the video. But I think it's better for you to stick around and watch this portion first, because it's very easy to misinterpret a tier list and just come up with the wrong information or, the wrong impression and write, a bad comment that's just kind of stupid. So the idea with this tier list and my intention was to make a hybrid of the high elo tier list and the low elo stomper tier list. I had to just make a mix of these both, okay? So these are the champions that crush high elo games, that are good to pick up for improving players, and are generally just great at 1v9 solo carrying. I have left out the champions that are either not left out, I have the champions who do better in lower elo, who don't really do anything in high elo, or are very rare to see in high elo. I usually put them on the bottom part of the list, because this is kind of like I want this tier list to be all purpose, right? So like a Nasus or something that's just good at low elo, I'm not going to list that too high, am I? So let's just get right into it. I'm going to explain every single tier before I get into that tier's champions. Overpowered 1v9 champion, or S tier. Now I could have renamed this into God tier because, it's pretty much what S tier is nowadays. In the current meta of League of Legends, when it comes to top lane, the most powerful champions, the S tier champions, are so powerful that they basically make all the other champions look very weak in comparison. So let's think about Darius and Camille, for example, right? So Darius is a very insanely powerful solo queue champion, right? He's got the damage, he can win lane, he can turn fights around, but he seems like nothing compared to some of these guys. Like compared to a Yone, a Camille, a Tryndamere, he just seems so useless, right? That's just how it is. The top tier S tier champions are so powerful, even powerful champions look weak near them. That's the meta. That's what the meta is right now. There's always going to be 10, 15 champions per patch that basically break the game. Who, if you want to get free elo, just learn them and play them. But the rest of the champions will just feel weak in comparison. So I just want you to know that, because that's just the meta right now. And Riot's not really doing anything about it. So it's just our reality, I guess. So, let's just get right into the tier then. First off, Akshan or Ashkan. I'm going to call him Akshan. So Akshan is basically the range top laner representative in this tier. He is insanely powerful when played with good macro. Now, his laning is a bit tricky because he can get quite easily shredded by some of the other top laner champions, but his strength is his roam, right? His roam is insane. He can roam whenever he wants, and the most scary part about him is that when he snowballs and gets a ton of kills, it's very difficult to shut him down. Once he gets his kills going, he does an insane amount of damage, and he resets upon every single kill, so he can go in, get a kill, get out, or get more kills. It's just insane what this guy can do. Just getting him started is the more skillful part about his gameplay, but once you kind of get, control of him and pilot him properly, you can seriously just destroy games as long as you create space using your wave control. And his laning is quite powerful too. It's just that you have to make sure to use your grapple shot properly to get away from these meaty top laners. But yeah, he is an insanely powerful champion. Just he pushes in top lane, goes mid, gets a kill, gets in the enemy jungler, kills the jungler, just can do a lot of things, right? And the limit of this champion is just up to the person playing him. It's basically like top lane talent, essentially. The next champion I'm going to talk about is Camille. Now, a lot of people think that Camille is not that strong anymore after they nerfed her, but I think that is completely wrong. Now, to better contextualize why she's so powerful, I have to explain how powerful she was in Season 11, because a lot of players, especially lower ranked players, don't really understand it. In Season 11, she wasn't just overpowered. She broke the game. Like, she was insanely overpowered. And so was Tryndamere, so was Yone, but Camille was broken in a way where the part of her champion, which is the early laning, that required skill could be avoided and just skipped over, right? So the part of the champion that required skill didn't require skill anymore. So we got this situation where the people who were abusing Camille couldn't actually play Camille. They just pick the champion, and the champion was so overpowered and easy to play that they could just crush games. And you can especially tell this if you watch someone who's good at Camille play Camille. Like, have you ever watched a druid just play Camille? It's like insane, the tricks and the mechanics he does, the outplays. None of the Camille players in real games do that. They go in, they die, they do and sunder, it doesn't matter because the champs are overpowered. It's like, the people who play Camille are really bad at Camille. So with this nerf, we basically get into a situation where everybody who's had to just abuse Camille for freelo has to basically, actually learn how to play the champion instead of just turning off their brain. So Camille is still overpowered. She just requires skill like she used to. But again, she's still very, very overpowered. Next champion is Fiora. This champion requires no introduction, very powerful in the 1v1, can basically outfight a lot of top laners, is a menace when she gets going, she gets her kills, she's a great split pusher, she doesn't really kill turrets too fast, but her power in the side lane is what makes her a great split pusher, and her mobility, right? She can just kill someone and get out of there, okay? So she's arguably one of the best duelists in the game once she gets her items, just very difficult to take down alone. So yeah, Fiora is just a monster later on into the game. It's just getting through the lane, it's the difficult part, but with enough skill, you can do that quite easily. Well, not easily, but once you get there, to the skill level, you can do it easily. Irelia. Irelia is a champion whose spot in the S tier is a bit contentious because there is the shield buff nerfs that have come through, and we've not really seen the impact of the shield buff nerfs too much because it's just been 2 days since the season dropped. But I would say that the worst they'll do is drop her down to A tier, but I'll keep her in S tier for now until that happens. But Irelia is a very, very powerful champion. She's one of those champions that just basically spawns ahead of you, if you get what I mean. Like, playing Irelia in lane is so easy, and she gets so much free things with her Qs and stuff that, she just spawns more powerful than you, Laning with her is completely easy. You get a lot of sustain. Farming with her is super easy. It's almost impossible to out CS an Irelia because even if you out CS her 20-30 and leave lane to gank, she just Qs everything and gets everything anyway. She's just insanely powerful champion. Now the issue with her comes in one, wave management, because you can get abused pretty hard if you don't play with your minions quite well, and her later on late game team fighting, or just just team fighting in general, because unless you're super fed on her, you're just gonna get swatted away in one shot. But her laning power and how much she can do after she gets fed is just insane, because a fed Irelia is a monster to take down, and she only gets better and better with time. Up next, we got Jayce, the Grandmaster of all weapons. Jayce is a very, very, very powerful, nice champion for Season 12. And if you're a Darius player, I recommend you picking him up, because I'm going to be picking him up, right? It's he is such a great champion. He is loving the new Lethal Tempo. He's just abusing it. He's just crushing games. His builds are great. There's a lot you can do on this champion. And his versatility is the thing that I want to bring attention to, right? Now, with a lot of these champions, they're either good at one thing or the other thing. Like, they're only good at staying in lane and, farming. They're not that good at roaming and helping each other. Like, Tryndamere, all he does is sit in lane until he gets powerful enough to kill everybody. But with Jax, he's just, like, the jack of all trades of just... You can get anything done with this guy. You need to go help your jungler. You can jump in there, help him cross walls. You need to go gank someone. You can jump in, counter-strike, stun, whatever. You need to sit in lane and get fed. You can do that too. It's like, this guy can do it all. It's just insanely kind of just difficult to get through early laning. A lot of times you're going to be behind because his early laning is quite like bad compared to some of these champions. But once you learn how to survive until you get your mythic, you're just going to be like a monster on the Rift with this guy. I'm going to be picking it up. So yeah, he's a great purple dude. Donatello. Anyway, we got Jayce. Jayce is an absolute menace. It's like they... Arcane viewers, man. But jokes aside, Jayce is just a complete nightmare to deal with, because once he gets the completed mana immune item, or Muramana, I don't know which one of those two it is, but once he completes the tier 80 item, mana immune, he is just a monster. Like, he does a ton of damage. You can put a Jayce behind, and once he completes Eclipse and mana immune, he just chunks out ADCs and stuff with one of those electrocute balls. It's like, damn, you got hit by one of those, time to go back to base, or you're just going to get destroyed in team fights. He has insanely good poke. He's really good at just damage with his team. He can go in his hammer form when he has to. It's just, there's a lot of tools in this guy's kit to just make him a menace. He does start kind of falling off in like the later portions of the game if you don't play him properly, but his laning is just way too oppressive, and the only thing that stands in the way of a Jayce player is just like himself, basically. If you can master Jayce, you can tear up solo queue, and he's a very, very powerful champion with very few weaknesses. So yeah, he's a great solo queue champion, great laner, and can take over a lot of lanes. Riven is basically the perfect one-trick champion for solo queue. Tons of damage, can fight everybody and kind of win in lane with enough skill. Once she just chooses a bunch of kills, she is a monster to deal with in team fights. Very difficult to hold down. She's just got a ton of ability, so it's impossible to kind of escape from her. Like, she is a monster to play, and I don't think I have to explain too much as to why Riven is this powerful. Shen, with the current state of the game being how, top lane is just that lane no one goes to, and the game is just played in the other lanes, Shen is a great champion to play because he has impact on everywhere on the map. Once you get the wave control and laning knowledge to just, make sure you don't lose too much CS when you go for teleport ganks, you can really just turn games around with this guy. Like, your ADC is getting, 3-man dove, you ult there, you save the day, and you get 3 kills. It's insane. So yeah, Shen's a great, great, powerful champion, and honestly, a champion I'd recommend a lower rank player to pick up, because he's a champion that trains macro, and a lot of top laners, especially the newer top laners, have a lot of macro issues. They just don't pay attention to the map. Shen trains that, so he's a great champion for trading. Tahm Kench, I hate this champion. I don't know any person who doesn't hate this champion. Really annoying, really overpowered. Just, his trading is too powerful. It's like, usually, like, you can kind of just take over the lane level 1 and just control whatever's going on top side until like level 4 or so. But once this guy just gets rolling and gets his shield, you just can't do anything against him. It's like you do your whole combo to out-trade him, and he hits one tongue lash and he's just out-traded you. It's just so annoying. He's great against ranged champions because his tongue lash is basically like really difficult to miss, right? It's like the hitbox is kind of huge. So it's not like you just throw it at the general direction of the enemy and it'll probably land. So he's just a very, very powerful champion at the top lane because of how well you can trade. And if you win lane as him, you are straight up a menace. Right? You just cannot be killed in a team fight ever, right? He's just unkillable completely. So like, he's just that powerful. But I personally hate this champion. Just disgusting. I can't even recommend you abuse him, but if you really want that free low, go for it. He's not that difficult to play. Tryndamere. Tryndamere is just obviously broken for such a long time. He was like, every single high elo top laner knew that he was broken for like a few seasons now. Well, not a few seasons, season 10, season 11. But it's just that in season 11, he started being OP in the mid lane. So yeah, Riot listens to those guys, but not top laners. But like, Tryndamere's been broken for such a long time, and he's still broken. Tryndamere just scales insanely well. His laning is a bit he can get a bit abused in lane, but the best part about him is that no matter what happens to you, you'll still scale up and be a threat to the enemy team, right? You're still a factor, no matter what. And once you get your crit items and stuff, you are a complete monster. You just 2-tap people. You can dive anybody who comes to protect your turret. So it's not like, like if you play some of these other split pushers, it's like sometimes they just send someone under the turret to just match your wave and you can't kill them. Tryndamere can. And in the current state of the game where there's a ton of damage, that 5 seconds of invulnerability from Tryndamere is just, it just feels so much longer than ever, right? It's like that 5 seconds feels so long. So he's just insanely powerful. Up next is Yone. Yone is basically just Tryndamere, except, he's a bit less in split push situations, but he's better when it comes to, like, team fighting, right? So Tryndamere is more of, like, a lonely split pusher, but Yone is, like, kind of, they do the exact same thing, but Yone just does it better in team fights because of his CC, right? Yone is incredible in lane. He's got the best 2-item power spike out of any other champion in the game, I think. He's just a monster once he gets those 2 items going, even if he has been just griefing the whole time, It's like, you can be a very good Yone player, but you don't need to be. It's kind of the same case of explaining that I did with Camille, where he's just so overpowered that you can just afford to lose lane and int a few times. And as long as your top laner isn't some genius who just takes over the map, you can still come back and outdo them. He's just crazy to play. So just play him, learn how much damage he does in his ultimate, abuse your E, and you should be good to go. He's a very, very powerful, overpowered champion. And I, for one, don't think he's going to be impacted by the shield bow nerfs at all. Now we're in the amazing carry potential A tier. These guys are your bread and butter, the classic powerful top lane champions. They're almost always good. They got the power to carry games, or they got something they do really well that lets them just, perform quite well. We got Aatrox. Aatrox is an amazing generalist champion that just takes a bit of skill to play. He's a monster in team fights. He's great early game in early fights, in early skirmishes, in the river and stuff like that. He is great when it comes to playing with his team, because once he gets that reset with his ultimate, he can just keep fighting until the fight is over. He's a very big presence when it comes to team fights because his Q is AoE and because he can just get resets, and he's got the CC and stuff to just support his team quite well. He's like, I'd argue that he's one of the bruisers with one of the best team fighting ability. Now his laning and hitting Qs on specific champions is quite difficult. Once you run into someone like an Irelia or a person who actually knows how to dodge your Qs, it does get somewhat difficult to land some of your abilities, and that's where the skill part of Aatrox comes in. The reason a lot of Aatrox players feel kind of useless is because Aatrox just needs a ton of skill to play. Now, another reason the Aatrox players feel useless is because he is A tier, and because all these God tier champions make everyone else feel weak, right? It's like, just remember that for every single champion in A tier, right? Just remember that. So yeah, he's a great champion. Darius, our boy, our classic solo queue monster. Darius has always been great in solo queue, always will be. He's a great champion for teaching wave management. He's an amazing champion to just pick up and carry yourself to diamond with. He's like, once you learn to get kills in lane, you can do very, very well with him. The thing with him is that he is a bit squishy in the current meta, but if you win lane with him, you can basically stomp every single early to mid game team fight you're in. So he's a great champion to abuse in early fights. Up next, we got Garen. Garen is, I would say, just like a simpler version of Darius, but his strength comes in just his laning overall, right? His laning is far more safe, and he's more about just waiting for the perfect opportunity to take over with your ultimate and stuff, right? He's like, once he gets rolling, he can very easily just target specific fed people and just take them down because his silence works wonders. His E does a ton of damage, and his ultimate works as a perfect execute. The issue with Garen is that he's not that good in Diamond, I would say, because in Diamond it's like you don't really have the macro skill to really abuse him outside of lane, which is what you need on Garen. Because of his move speed and stuff, you need to be at the right place at the right time with the right flank, with the right, vision control with a sweeper. And if you can't really do that, he's not that powerful. So he's great in early in low elo. He's good in some high elo matches, but in the middle of Diamond, just in Diamond specifically, I don't think he's that good to play at all. Up next is Graves. Graves got a ton of tools to play this safe play the lane safe, which is great because once he gets his shield blow and his LDR, he is just critting people for half their health every single time. Once he gets shield blow, he can basically put up a fight against a lot of these meaty top laners. So he's just a menace in the top lane and the top laner of choice for a lot of high rank players. He's really powerful. The only thing difficult with him is some, wave control because his autos are always AoE, but that can be managed with. Next, we got Gwen. Gwen's laning is a bit difficult because you have to basically survive until you get level 6. If you die, then you might just, lose the whole game. But the strong part about Gwen is that once she gets fed, she's just a menace to deal with. It's like fighting a fed Irelia, but instead of her being somewhat killable, you have to get closer to her to kill her because of her W. And when you get close to her, she just kills you, right? Because her Q, her autos, it's just a very counterintuitive way of fighting someone that just works in her favor. And once she gets that, that fully stacked Q going, she can just get a ton of healing out and just be a complete monster 1v9 fights. It takes multiple people to take down a fed Gwen. And if she has any teammates nearby, it's just over, right? It's over. The difficult part with her compared to an Irelia is that she is a bit more difficult to get through laning, right? She's a bit difficult to get through lane, but once you do play around your ultimate properly, you take your trades intelligently, you should be good to go. A lot of Glen players in solo queue just turn their brain off because they can't trade, but you gotta learn how to trade on this champion. Kled, I don't really have to do much explanation. He's got the damage, he's got the tankiness, he's got the mobility. He can just do insane things and they somehow work out because Kled is just a crazy champion. Great champion, great for solo queue, just very, very difficult to really get a control of, to understand what you should do in specific matchups. Ornn, I would say, is the most powerful tank to play right now. Maybe you could argue Sion if you adopt that weird split pushy Sion playstyle, but I would say Ornn is still better. Ornn has got insane trading in lane. He's like the king of trades. It's like, to lose a trade on Ornn, you really have to be either counterpicked or just be stupid. I don't know. It's like a very powerful champion when it comes to trading. His all-ins are great. He's not really like a 1v9 carry champion, but he is like so good at everything a tank's supposed to be good at that I can't help but just put him here because he is the best tank to play, right? He's got a ton of CC and in team fights, he just crushes people with his ultimate. That's just so massive. Up next, we got Pantheon. Pantheon kind of suffers the same things as Darius in that if he is put down earlier on, he can't just get, outscaled because he doesn't really scale that well into the super late game. You have to play him a very specific way to not get outscaled. But Pantheon has a lot of power in his kit to just lock down the early lane. You get Ignite, you trade well with him, and you just crush people with your Q spans, with everything. And this champion can do a lot of aggression in the early game, right? It's like, you can just go mid, you can go jungle, your ultimate lets you pull off crazy roams, just get ganks out. He's got a ton of damage, and once you get going, he's just unstoppable in fights, unless he gets, locked down. His E provides a very good amount of protection if he is given to a very good player. So yeah, he's very powerful. Renekton. A lot of people think Renekton is horrible, but I do not think so. Renekton just takes way more skill to play now, but if you know how to play him, you can do a lot with him. Like, he's got basically everything a top laner needs, damage, tankiness, whatever. It's just that his weakness is his difficulty and how sometimes he just feels kind of useless against some champions. But he's still a great solo queue champion. He just requires skill. Sett, a very nice, easy, simple champion that does his job, goes in, does his job, gets out. He's very powerful in low elo. If you're a low elo player, I would definitely recommend picking him up or at least trying him because his laning is great. And in team fights in low elo, because in high elo nobody really cares about his W damage because he never lands W, right? That never lands the true damage. But in low elo, people just stand, just shoot at you and you can just get like a 3,000 damage W off or something crazy like that, So Sett is an amazing low elo pick, and in high elo, he's situational, but still a good pick if you pick him against the right teams. Sion. The split push Sion playstyle puts him in A tier if you got good macro, good control of vision, and just a good understanding of where the enemy players are. He's a great champion, but he does suffer like a lot of bad matchups, a ton of bad matchups. So if you're gonna play Sion, you have to play him in a way where you just avoid your enemy top laner. You go in, you wave clear, and you just ult out or something, or you ult into the turret and take as much plates as possible before you go down. So yeah, you really gotta abuse the bows, split push Sion thing, but otherwise, he's not really that good. If you do abuse that, he's pretty good. Wukong. Wukong has a lot of great matchups. Once he gets going, he is just like a menace in team fights because he really can't just destroy an entire backline on his own with his ultimate. He has the damage and he scales quite well too. So yeah, he's a great champion. He's also quite easy to play, right? He's not like get super good on him and just, outplay people. He's a simple champion you put in your champion pool and just pick into the right teams and just crush them absolutely. He is very nice as a side champion. There are some Wukongs who are really good at him who do outplay with a clone and stuff, but you don't need to do all that. You just gotta brute force things with the things he's got in his kit. The next tier is just champions who are very powerful or just very situational. They got things in the meta that just counter them, or they can't really do some things properly. It's like they got very clear weaknesses that just hold them back. First off, Akali. Akali is a great champion once you get her to level 6, great in team fights, but her weakness is that she's not that good early game. She gets pushed and destroyed by a lot of these other top laners, and sometimes that's enough for the game to just be lost. So, like, in games where there's a lot of stuff happening around top lane, Akali's a bad pick early on. Akali's a bad pick because she really can't stand up to the pressure of basically most of these other top lane champions right here. Cho'Gath. Cho'Gath requires a ton of skill for a tank to pull off. Landing his skill shots is quite difficult, and he's got a ton of bad matches, but in exchange for that, he gives a lot of consistent tankiness. Consistent damage is just consistent based on if you land your abilities or not. He's not like an Ornn or something where it's a bit more guaranteed. Like if you land one of your abilities, you can just chain them together and everything's guaranteed, but with Cho'Gath, it's a bit less guaranteed. He's very good into teams where the silence is powerful though. So if you're like a Katarina or something who just goes in and kills everyone, your silence is going to do wonders, as silences are really powerful in the current season. That's also the reason why Garen's kind of high here, because his silence just lets him isolate even mobile targets and take them down quickly. Up next, we got Gankplank. Gankplank is very annoying. He just starts ahead of you, but it's just how the champion is, right? He's a great trader in lane, and First Strike is just allowing him to just accumulate a gold lead even while being kills behind. He's just crazy in lane. Now, he's not exactly the whole, I'm going to take over top lane and win lane and 1v9 kind of top lane, because he can't really get too ahead in terms of kills in the early game, but once you do get going and get your crit items, his barrels just explode for so much. It's just that he's not that good in the early game outside of top lane, basically. I mean, he's okay at just harassing someone and just keeping them at bay with his barrels, but when it comes to like the real big fights where it's like the jungler is here or maybe the mid laner is here, he's just so useless because all he does is some damage and some slows with his barrels, whereas the other top laners, Darius or like the Aatrox, they just completely take over the fight. So he can't match up to the other top laners in early skirmishes, but he does have the tools to basically keep the lane going. So if he's counterpicked also, he's also just destroyed. There's that to think of as well. Gragas. Gragas has got a ton of great matchups, but he's just not a carry champion, Now, like, he's kind of A tier if you consider just high elo because of how good trades he can kind of deliver, but that's basically it. All he does is just hold the lane and trade well. He does have a lot of power in team fights in terms of just his CC, spreading people apart, just isolating them and taking them with his team, but he's not really a champion that you're going to do too much solo carrying with. He's just there to put someone strong top lane that can help out. Kayle. Kayle's early game is way too weak for me to put her any higher, but she is just an incredible, just a beast once she gets her level 11, level 16, and her items. She's just can solo carry games. It's like she's like a win condition, Like if all else fails, just wait for Kayle to scale up, and she will carry the team, and she often does because of how powerful she gets once she gets going. It's just that she's not so good in lower elos because she has no early game pressure. She can't invade, she can't do anything. All she can do is just CS and bully some melee champions. Poppy is very situational. She's got a lot of hard counters. She's like a one-trick champion, so I'm putting her in B tier. She's powerful into the right teams where it's like a lot of mobility and stuff, and she can kind of, you make use of her E. I think that's like the big orb that stops mobility, but other than that, I don't see her around too much, and there's a lot of things that just destroy her. Quinn is basically completely invalidated by Akshan. Akshan does everything that Quinn wants to do even better, and unlike Quinn, Akshan can actually roam pre-6, whereas she just has to wait till level 6. So God forbid she's up against someone she can't exactly bully. She's just doomed, right? Now, she can just, like she has enough movement speed to just perma roam after 6 and then just come back to not miss that much CS. But it's just that, like, she's not that threatening, first of all, by herself. Whereas, like, how do I say this? Once she gets into the fight and you catch her, that's it. Right? But with Akshan, he's like, even if you do catch him, he's still got mobility in terms of those resets and stuff. So it's like she's a very risky champion to play because if you just get caught by the wrong thing, it's just over, right? So that's kind of her weakness. But honestly, she's just down here because she's just a worse version of Akshan. Like, she's just there's no reason to play this champion when Akshan is, like, available. Rengar top, very versatile, very powerful, very just right under the certain circumstances, but he's got a lot of counter picks that just ruin his life. And the thing with Rengar is that, he does a lot of things, but instead of just playing him to do those things, just play a champion that does those things better. You get what I mean? He's like, instead of a jack of all trades thing like Aatrox, he's not really like that amazing at anything unless he gets super fed, right? He's got amazing roams, but he can only roam once every few minutes with his ultimate, and then it's a pain to get back top again and stuff like that. He can build full crit and do damage, but there are champions who do better damage and actually survive after they go in. There are champions who he can actually go in, be disruptive, just max W and just W 3 times to just out heal everybody, but there are champions who can do the exact same thing just way better than him, right? Rengar is not really good at anything specifically, and he's basically just picked based upon the matchup. If you get a great matchup going like a Jax or something, you can pick Rengar and just destroy someone. But yeah, Rumble is just like, he's got all the tools he needs to just rip open some lanes, but he doesn't really belong with top lane too much because some of these champions just outdo him and just destroy him once they hit their power spikes. So in the current state of top lane, Rumble doesn't really have too much of space. Singed. I hesitate to put this guy in top lane because the top lane playstyle to win the game as Singed is running Predator and just sprinting up and down the map like an animal, just ganking people non-stop. It's like, just... oh, this level 4 Singed is like 50 CS behind and 3 levels behind. Is he going to come top and finally farm to, get back up? No, he's going to run bot again and get 2 more kills for his team. It's like a very dumb, weird, just messed up playstyle, but that's just what you got to do to play Singed and win games with him because he really cannot do that much against some of these champions. And he does get counterpicked quite hard by like a Darius or something. Teemo's not that useful. Like, to be honest, like, he's very good at winning lane and putting shrooms around the lane to just control the area, but that's only if he has prio. If he doesn't have prio, he can't really do that, so he's just completely useless. His DPS isn't really that good either. You have to be playing him against people who use auto attack specifically so that his blind can get some work done, but otherwise, he's just a situational pick at best. You pick him into the right situations and into the right teams, and then you can do a lot with him. And if you're one of the 3 people who can intelligently use his shrooms, he's A tier, right? His shrooms are quite difficult to use properly. Like, when your enemy team has a Teemo, you should not be able to walk anywhere without Sweeper. Okay, that's how you know you're playing against a good Teemo. It's just that doesn't really happen ever. Trundle is an insanely powerful champion that is basically, he should be played when he's played into teams where his pillar can get a lot done, If he's into immobile champions who can't really dash around too much, or he's into dashes who can just interrupt with his pillar, then you can get a ton done with this champion because he's a very powerful kind of 1v1 bruiser. It's just that, like, he does get kited and destroyed quite easily, and if he's not into champions where he can just, stop them with his pillar, he just feels kind of like watching him play against these champions who just jump away and he's just standing there useless. It's kind of pathetic, but if you pick him into the right people, you can get a lot done. It's just the skill in him comes in just getting fed and just pushing your lead. Urgot is a great champion once he scales. He's basically a tank that just kills people. He does a ton of damage. His execute is very nice in a teamfight setting. His main issue is his early game. His early game is not that good. He can't really trade against anyone that well. I mean, he can trade against people, but his Aldens are so pathetic without his ultimate that he just can't do anything. And he really needs his level 13 to just really get into the game, right? But yeah, if you can survive the early game and get fed on him with his ultimate, then he is a menace. But That's just not going to happen against great players. Volibear. This guy is not having a great time, is he? He's not made for this state of the game, but he's still playable, right? If you play him into right matchups, he's great, right? If he's great into some of these matches where you can just stun them, get your lightning, and just kill them straight. But, like, there's just nothing he does that well on his own. And I guess a lot of these more mobile champions, or these champions like mages that can just kind of CC him, he's kind of just doomed because he doesn't really have any big dashes or big mobility or anything to really match up against some of these other champions. He really needs to get fed and get going to do anything, which is why he's down here. He's not like a tank where he can just sit back, CS, and still be useful. He needs kills to be really powerful. Yorick. I'm just drink a bit of coffee here. Coffee animation cancel. Okay. Yorick. Yorick is another situational champion. If the enemy team has a lot of map mobility where they can just collapse on you and kill you, he's just not that good. His team fighting is quite weak. He's just made to sit in top lane and just push waves. But if he's counterpicked, or again, if the enemy team can very easily just collapse on him and kill him, he's usually just a pick the enemy team can use to get objectives. It's like, you really gotta just be really good at split pushing, and against some teams, he doesn't have the mobility to split push. If you actually look at the good split pushers of now, the Camilles, the Irelia, the Camilles, the Fioras, the Jayces, Tryndameres, all these guys have one thing: great mobility. 1v9 split pushing is not about just fighting people; it's about escaping, wasting time, and Yorick can't do that. If he's caught, he has to fight, and just escaping with him is not that possible when you're up against some of these, Season 12, Season 11 champions. All right, C tier. Excuse me. God, I'm disgusting. Okay. C tier. So these champions are basically the champions you pick to hold the lane, right? These champions are not that great when it comes to carrying the game 1v9. They either lack the damage, or they need too much team play, or they need very, very specific things to happen for them to do that well. So yeah, Mundo, he's not that good of a carry. He's just made to sit and hold lane when you're autofill. He's just that, He does get kind of rolling later on. He scales insanely well in team fights and stuff, but he's just not that good of an early laner to take control of the game that much. Nar's a great trader, Nar's a great team fighter, but that's the thing. He's made to fight with his team. He can't really split push that well. His wave control is not that good. He's just made to go for good flanks and good ultimates with his, mega form. So yeah, he kind of suffers from needing too much team play. Illaoi, this lady, Illaoi's not that good at all in the higher ranks because she really needs like a very specific thing to happen for her to get her ultimate done, right? A fight has to happen in one spot, and it's not a mobile fight where everybody's already used their mobility. Then she can ult and kill everyone, but that's not really going to happen too much, is it? It's like if it's a Baron fight, then yeah, sure. But if it's like a random team fight in the middle of the lane, these champions just dash and attack way too much, and she's just left there, just slow walking around, landing an occasional tentacle, She just can't keep up with this season's champions. Kennen's not that strong in the early laning. Sure, he can get a lot of trades in, but he just doesn't do any damage early game to be a threat at all. Not to a lot of these champions, and not in an early game skirmish. He's basically just worthless in a river fight. All he does is just stun someone, right? He doesn't really do anything else. So yeah, I don't think Kennen is that powerful of a champion for solo queue. Now, if you get an organized team, right? Or if your teammates kind of know what they're doing, like, okay, my jungler's not going to come top, he's going to play on bot side, I'm going to get level 6, and then he's going to come top, then it's a different thing. Like in higher ranks, I'd say he's more of a B tier champion, but if you're considering lower ranked just games where your jungler is not going to be thinking that much, he's C tier at best. Malphite, this guy is just a brain dead champion that you pick to exist. You don't really pick him to carry, you pick him to survive. Maokai, just like Malphite, actually, basically the exact same role, except he's a bit better if you're going on with your team, right? If you're just sticking to your team and slaving, he's a bit better, whereas Malphite's more of an aggressive tank, right? He's a bit defensive, but he's a bit more aggressive. Malphite's a lot better at peeling his team because of his Q and stuff. Mordekaiser is not made for the current state of the game because a lot of these champions actually beat him inside of his ultimate. Like, unless you get fed, unless you're into a team that you can just, you know, kind of walk up to and do what you're supposed to do, like, he's great. But, like, landing his Q is one thing, but against a lot of these super dashy mobile champions, you are never going to land your E. The only way you can land it is if you E and you insta-ult them so they can't actually move out of them, because people can just walk out of it, you know? It's like, let alone dash out of it. So he's just not that good in the current state of the league with these champions. Vladimir, too weak early to get anything done, and he really needs his items to really just be useful, and he's not that abusable by jungle ganks and stuff, but still way too weak to get anything done, so I hesitate giving him a powerful rank at all. D tier, these champions just exist for counter picks. You pick them to win the lane, and that's pretty much it. Heimerdinger, you pick him if it's a good immobile just champion, and if you want to just lock down the lane. It's just that his weakness comes in that he dies very quickly. So if you're caught out, you can just get one shot before you set anything up. You really need Zhonya's ASAP on him. But if you get Zhonya's quickly, then you can't really, like, you know, get your damage out. So he kind of runs into those kinds of issues where you need Zhonya's, but like to be useful outside of lane. But, you know, going Zhonya's kind of ruins your damage. So yeah, Heimer is just made for winning lane, and that's pretty much it. Lucian is kind of the same thing, just another ranged top laner. You pick him to cheese win lane, but if you die on him, it's just the worst thing ever because you're basically out of the game completely. Nocturne, if you get into a matchup that you can just cheese level 1 and stuff, like once you get your fears out on level 1 with lethal tempo, he's great because you can just roam around, but he cannot really stand up to a lot of these top laners. Silas is just made for countering Malphite, nothing else. This champion sucks top lane. Vayne, she's here for countering ranged top lane, for countering basically bruisers, your Dariuses, your Setts, stuff like that, but she kind of struggles against some of these more mobile champions. Like, she can't really do anything against an Irelia, for example. It's just, you know, she just kind of dies often. So yeah, she's not that good in the current meta, and that's a good thing. Warwick, this champion just exists to cheese kills in top lane. Like, he's great at 1v1s, but he's not that useful outside of lane. It's like, oh no, the enemy warrior got fed. What are we gonna do? Just kill him, you know? Like, unless it's like the enemy team just picked like champions that can't really kill tanks, it's like he's just gonna get shredded outside of lane, even if he does win. And God forbid he doesn't get kills. If he doesn't get kills in lane, he is so useless that it'll just make your head spin. E tier, this is just very niche, very difficult, or just major weaknesses. Olaf, if you die like once, you're useless, right? This guy just cannot handle being behind, and even if he's ahead, he's just not that good. This meta is not very kind on Olaf. Nasus, he is too weak to get things done in the early game, and unlike other scalar champions, he can't really fight, you know, in team, like, he can't really fight good backliners. Like, his power spike is like mid-late game, right before the enemy backliners really have all of their damage items, because once they get their damage items, he just gets popped like the rest, right? He does not have the mobility to really match up to some of these ranged champions, because he just gets CC'd and destroyed. That's it, you know? You really need mobility to scale in this game in the current state. Rise, again, he's just made to sit in lane, EQ, that's it. He can't really get any kills at all unless the guy just stands in front of you and lets you bash him with your E's and Q's. Phase Rush makes him a bit difficult to catch, but it's like, he's just useless, man. I don't know. Swain is actually not that bad once he gets going, but it's like, getting going with him is such a chore that it's just impossible as a task. It's like, he just dies so often. He can't really peel himself too well. Like, he's just really, really not that good. Viego, another champion where if he gets rolling, he's great, but he gets destroyed by a lot of top laners. And Yasuo, I would say he's more of like a C tier champion or a B tier, but he is probably the hardest champion to play in top lane, because just like how hard you have to outplay people to survive. I don't mean to win lane. You have to outplay people to survive, to stay even, to CS, you have to outplay people. He's just an insanely difficult champion to play. And I don't even recommend putting time into him if you're going to play him in top lane, unless you've already put time into him. Anyway, that is pretty much it for this tier list. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace out and happy hunting in this new season.